So good day, this is a recording of my presentation for my oral defense, just in case we will have difficulties in an actual presentation. So good day, and I'm here to present my dissertation entitled Motivation in Seeking Mentoring and Developing Self-Determination, a Hermeneutic Phenomenological Study. And this will be the outline of my defense. First, I'll be stating the problem, and then summarizing literature that were used in my study, then the methodology used, the findings of this study, and conclusions and recommendations. So, what motivates a student to be in a mentoring relationship? This question has been egging me, for the past 20 years when I have started mentoring, and it's something that interests me, and that's why this is the essence, I would say, of my dissertation to answer this question. What motivates students to be in a mentoring relationship? Why should they be in one? Okay. And these are the three research questions that I tried to answer. One is, how is a good mentoring relationship experienced by students? Second, why are mentees motivated to seek out mentoring sessions with their mentors? And third, how do these mentoring experiences develop the basic psychological needs of competence, autonomy, and relatedness among the mentees? And now for the second part, the summary of related literature. So major theories, I have used 4 references for this presentation that impacted and influenced the course of my research. First is self-determination theory. This is a macro theory that is made up of 6 mini theories. And of the 6 mini theories, I got 2 of those that played a major role in my dissertation. So first one is the organismic integration theory, and the second one is the basic psychological needs theory. Now, the relevant research that included here, one is a journal article by Dr. Jansen and her team and her colleagues. The title of that journal is Motives to Mentor, Self-Focused, Protege-Focused, Relationship-Focused, Focused, and Unfocused Motives. They essentially look into different motivations of mentees in an informal mentoring program within a corporate environment. So this is in the workplace, in an informal mentoring program. The next one is a book by Dr. Ryan and DC. They are the ones who developed self-determination theory. In that book, I got a lot of information about the theories that I have used. The next one is a journal article from Dr. Sloan and Dr. Obi. This was part of his dissertation work. So this article is highly cited, more than 300 citations for this particular article on phenomenology and hermeneutic phenomenology, the philosophy, methodologies, and using hermeneutic phenomenology to investigate lecturers' experiences of curriculum development. And I used his process here as my guideline in doing my actual data analysis using hermeneutic phenomenology. And last, it is very timely that this book was published last year when I was doing my data analysis, Older and Wiser, by Dr. Jean Rhodes. This book is available in the Philippines, but I was lucky enough to have it delivered here in our country. And a lot of the ideas that she presented here somehow resonated in my study. I'm glad to say that it resonated with the results that I saw. Now, the major theories, self-determination theory, a broad theory of human motivation and wellness. So it describes about human flourishing and motivations and autonomy of individuals. And essentially, I using 3 of broad topics under self-determination theory. So one is that self-determination theory is concerned with how social contextual factors support or thwart people's thriving through the satisfaction of their basic psychological needs. We will identify what those basic psychological needs are later. And also organismic theory of human behavior and personality development. And then it differentiates, this theory differentiates types of motivations along a continuum from control to autonomous, meaning that there's something that controls one to do an action, which is a motivation, or it is something that is autonomous, that is he himself would want and will to do something. And I'll be describing more this part of that theory about social contextual factors that support or thwart people's thriving through the basic psychological needs, fulfilling them. And these basic psychological needs are competence, autonomy, and relatedness. It was mentioned that when these three are fulfilled, people will thrive. So that's the basic essence of that theory. When we have competence, when we have autonomy and relatedness, and when we grow those needs, then we achieve fulfillment and people will thrive. Now, again, for this time, I'll be focusing on the last two descriptions here in this slide. So I'll talk about organismic theory of human behavior and personality development, and then differentiation, the different motivations along a continuum. So those two actually are encapsulated in the organismic integration theory that falls under, again, self-determination theory. So when we speak of something that's organismic, this one describes living things as characterized by assimilative and integrative processes. There's an assimilation and integration, involved here. And it also describes, OIT, describes how extrinsically motivated behaviors become autonomous. Well, an example of this is maybe before our parents would punish us or would give us a reward if we study. But now we find ourselves actually enjoying studying. So these are two kinds of motivations, but the same behavior, the behavior of studying. If before it was an external motivation that led us to study, but now it's more of internal motivation. So it talks about how motivations could be integrated. So we see here external regulation, interjection, identification, and integration. This one, this four actually describes the continuum of integration from something that's externally regulated to something that's internally or autonomously regulated. Okay, so when we speak of motivations, we have extrinsic and intrinsic motivations. An intrinsic motivation moves one to an action that has a separable outcome. It could be a reward or a social approval or other things. And intrinsic motivations move us to engage in activities that we find inherently enjoyable, something that we like. And the absence of motivation is what we call amotivation. And we see here a description, a visualization of that continuum. So we see here at the left side, we have the controlled motivation, but that becomes more autonomous when we go to the right side. So when we speak of controlled motivation, we speak of lower motivational quality, meaning that there's lower motivation, performance, and wellness drop. And the opposite is true if there's higher motivational quality, performance and wellness are better. And we see below in the spectrum of extrinsic motivation, we have external regulation, and then interjection, identification, and integration somehow speaks about how we internalize what was one initially an external motivation, like an external regulation. When it becomes more internalized, then we call it introjection. For example, of interjection is when we feel, when we're praised, for example, when we study, that is ego enhancement. So if there's an enhancement of the ego, then that's what we call interjection. Still external, but it's more internal as compared to a purely punishment or reward system. Now, identification looks into the importance of that particular behavior that becomes a value to the person. So for me, studying now is good because I know that it's important in my life to be able to go to the next year level. Okay. Now, integration is, when that value is in congruence with all the other values that we have, not to the point that we would have to sacrifice even other values for that particular value. An example is we value rest. For example, the rest of, let's say, playing a video game. But the thing is, we value also studying because at that time, studying is better. So we say that a person is integrated when he knows that, okay, I'll study rather than play video games because they see the value. It's sort of integrated and they're willing to give up other values for that, okay? Now for the theoretical framework, I made use of those two sub-theories or mini-theories under self-determination theory, basic psychological needs theory, where mentoring relationships enhance wellness and development because the basic psychological needs of students are cultivated in such a mentoring relationship. And then the organismic integration theory, mentees are motivated to seek out their mentors for mentoring conversations because they trust their mentors and they know that their mentors can help them. Okay. So for the methodology, I interviewed some of my respondents in the University of Asia and the Pacific. That's the university where the mentors and the mentees are. And it's the best place because there's security and we can have privacy there. I was able to interview some mentees and mentors, but because of the pandemic, in-person interview is no longer possible. So I consulted my advisor, and she gave me approval that I can conduct my interview through video call. And that's what I did for the rest of my respondents. I have 24 individual respondents, and they are a mentor-mentee pair. So I have 12 mentor-mentee pairs. They have to be a pair, meaning that the mentee is being mentored by the same mentor that I'm interviewing. Okay, and there are 6 pairs of female mentor-mentee pairs and 6 pairs of male mentor-mentee pairs. So demographics of our mentees, on average, they are 21 years old from various courses in the university. On average, around year 3. And on average, also, they have seen their mentors, the same mentor, for 2.25 years. Because the idea here is that they should have seen their mentor for at least 1 complete school year. And this is the demographics of our mentors. On average, they're 46.6 years old, and they have had 16.33 years of mentoring experience on average. But I have here a mentor who has had 2 years of mentoring experience. I have one who has 31 years, and 8 years, and 14 years, 22 years. So there's a variation in the number of years being a mentor. And for my research design, I used qualitative method using hermeneutic phenomenological analysis as a methodology. Okay, so phenomenology as a research method is the appropriate tool to be able to go deep to understand the motivations of these students to explore their lived experiences. So that's what I want to figure out, the lived experiences. However, there are several types of qualitative phenomenological research, and 2 were considered in this study: descriptive under Husserl and hermeneutic phenomenology that's developed by Heidegger. Both these sought out to uncover human experience as it is lived. Okay. Now, while descriptive phenomenology and hermeneutic phenomenology have similar focus and outcomes, including data collection, subject selection, understanding of the lived experience, they vary in the position of the researcher and how the data are processed. Unlike descriptive phenomenology, where bracketing takes place after self-reflection, hermeneutic phenomenology, the researcher of using hermeneutic phenomenology will not bracket or set aside one's biases and assumptions, but embed them in the interpretive process, since these are considered essential. And this is the from the line of Heideggerian phenomenology. The researcher is called to give considerable thought to their own experience and to explicitly recognize the way their positionality, experience, and biases relate to the lived experience being investigated. When it is too difficult to bracket the researcher's assumptions, biases, knowledge, and experience, then descriptive phenomenology would not be a good option. For my case, I am a mentor for 20 years, and I am also a mentee myself. And I have done research also during the coursework that I did in my PhD studies, and also when I headed the student mentoring program office rather of the University of Asia and the Pacific. So I got a lot of feedback. So I'm very much immersed in mentoring, and that's why it's going to be very difficult for me to bracket my thoughts, biases, experiences, positionality of mentoring. And thus, hermeneutic phenomenological research was selected over other qualitative methodologies because of the researchers' interest in going deeper into an understanding of the personal experience of students who have gone through mentoring as seen by them, and of course, because of my positionality. So what did I do? How did I proceed with my research? First is I got clearance from the Research Ethics Review Committee to clear my study. And then I had face-to-face or video call interviews, which were recorded with their permission. And then I transcribed those interviews. After transcribing them, I tried to make holistic themes. And then I sent them back to the respondents to ask them if what I have captured is actually what they need. If the holistic themes captured the essence of that interview, of their experience, the experience that they shared. And I made the necessary changes after they have given back those transcriptions and the data. And of course, I analyzed the data guided by the method used by Sloan and Vogts. I revised it according to my need. And of course, I read the document text to generate an initial holistic theme I mentioned earlier. And then I reread it again to be able to identify the life world themes, which are also called existentials. Now, I'll be using existentials more often because life world themes could be confusing with the themes that are generated in the data analysis. So these life world themes or these existentials are corporeality, spatiality, relationality, and temporality. Also, once I have identified them, I reread the text again and tried to reflect if those existentials that I have identified were captured in the holistic theme. If not, then I refine the holistic theme so that it gets captured. And then I read the transcript again when necessary and refine the holistic theme until the essence of the interview is captured by the holistic theme. And this is the time, after this process, this is the time that I sent this to the respondents. And last, when I started coding, I made use of a software, MaxQDA. It helps me declutter with work. It facilitated, as what Dr. De Castro would say, putting the fruits in the baskets, so trying to classify those fruits into those baskets. And that kind of classification was helped because it's more orderly in the software. Of course, the software did not do the putting of themes together. No, it just facilitated the transfer or identification of the codes, okay, and putting them together. Okay, so for the instrument that I used, the interview instrument, there are three parts. One is a brief introduction, which is made up of 3 questions. The main part, it has 6 questions, and the last part, which is a wrap-up question. Well, there are actually 3 or more follow-up questions to those 10 questions, and the number of questions and the kind of questions or the questions vary from interviewee to interviewee because depending on the responses, I will be generating different questions and exploring other aspects of their experience, again, depending on the responses. The interview lasted from around 30 minutes. And then there are some who have, the interview lasted for 2 hours, until over 2 hours. I started my interview March 10, and my last interview was August 17. Now, for the findings, I made 4 rounds of analysis. So the first, I would call them the 4 parts. The 4 rounds of analysis, I have 4 parts. The first part is emerging themes. So I tried to see what are the themes that emerged organically or naturally as I was looking through the data. For the second and third part, I made use of a frame, the basic psychological needs and the organismic integration theories. So what happens is that if I'm able to identify those existentials, and I'll be putting them under, for example, the basic psychological needs of competence, autonomy, and relatedness, does this belong under competence? Does this belong under autonomy? Does this belong to relatedness? So that's how I did for the second and third part. So there are already there are already categories before, okay? And then from those, let's say from competence, once I have collected those existentials, then I try to put common themes in them, and that's how I was able to generalize themes, for each of those basic psychological needs. And the same is true with organismic integration theory. Then for the holistic themes, what I did here is that remember the generated holistic themes, one holistic theme for each transcript. So I have 24, 12 from the students and then 12 from the mentors. And then of the 12 holistic themes that I got generated from the students, I tried to gather codes and then put the codes together. And I was able to come up with 4 themes. Now, what happened here is that since the students are the focus, the experience of the students is the focus of this study. Now, making use of those 4 themes, that's what I used to put together the codes that I found among the 12 holistic themes of the mentors. So I have a comparison of those 4 themes of the mentee and then the mentors. So we'll see that later. So for the first part, or the first cycle of analysis, I would say, so the emerging themes. So there are 5 themes that emerged. You see here, one is factors that hinder or get into the way of the mentoring relationship. Theme 2 talks about factors that build. So it's somehow the opposite of the first one. If the first one is what prevents the formation of the relationship, Theme 2 talks about how the relationship is built and how it's formed. The third part, it covers the needs of the mentees, the identifying needs of the mentees. The fourth theme talks about the reason why mentees initiate the mentoring session, because usually it's the mentor who seek out their mentees to talk to them normally. But for this, that's the fourth theme. And then the fifth theme is the perspective of the relationship. How do they look into the relationship? Okay, and here I have picked up some of the texts from the respondents. Of course, these are not the real names. The names that you will see here are pseudonyms. These are not the real names. So factors that hinder. I was shy at first. My first impression is that she's complicated, referring to her mentor, and strict. I am afraid that she might tell the others of my personal life. So there's that, hesitation to tell her mentor because she doesn't know her mentor. Maybe there's still doubts lingering in her head. Okay, but of course, eventually, Fatima was able to connect well with her mentor. She's referring here to her actual mentor. So that's, And then for the second theme, factors that build the mentoring relationship. So she was my prof for Christian civilization, both my first year semesters, and she instantly became one of my favorite professors in the university. And what builds that relationship is, the mentoring relationship, is that there is prior knowledge or encounter with that mentor, and it was a pleasant encounter. So that's one of the reasons why, how we can build a mentoring relationship. And the needs of the mentee. So there are various needs that are mentioned there, but I'll just be stating here one from Chuck, and actually deemed it, very important, because to a new student like me, I really do need a helping hand in adjusting to school. So when he was asked about his experience about mentoring, especially when he was just a new student, so he needed help to adjust to school. So one is adjustment to the university. For the fourth theme, why mentees initiate mentoring, among other reasons, since I got the one of Beth. Well, one was when I asked her when did she sought out her mentor. One was when I had troubles in majors. So I initiated the mentoring session and told her, Dr. Barbara, I need some advice. I need to talk to you. Okay. The names of the mentors here are also pseudonyms. These are not the real names. And finally, for the theme number 5, looking at the relationship, the perspective, how they look into the relationship. With regard to mentoring, I believe that as with any individual in a relationship, it's a handshake. So that's how he describes his relationship with his mentor. It's a handshake. It's very interesting. Later, I'll talk about what handshake is. Now, for the second set of analysis, look into the basic psychological needs of competence, autonomy, and relatedness. And here we will just be focusing on the middle topics because those are the themes, areas where competencies are developed and how these competencies are developed. Okay, so just these two. I'll be getting some of the text from the interviews. This one is from Billy. He said that we also integrated it, referring to virtues, because he will talk about virtues with his mentor. Not just life in the university, but life outside the university. Like, what would you do when you are at home? What would you do when you will work in the future and whatnot? So most of our talks with Dr. Bernard circle around the conversation of virtue. So see here, we have real life practice also, development. So it's not just like a theory, things that are, our mentors tell us, but here there is real life application of what the mentor is telling or teaching him. And how are these competencies developed? Okay, so from Billy, again, so it gave me something good to look forward to. And then, it gave me motivation to actually push through the hardship. Okay, so they're developed, when there are difficulties, and then the mentors motivate them or try to, push them so that their competence develop, so to go through the hardship. Okay, and then for autonomy, so this is the second of the 3 basic psychological needs, autonomy. So we'll have here the 3 themes under autonomy. One is really take on the advice of their mentors. So I can really trust his word with everything he says, and that's why I take his advice. So when a mentee freely takes on, that's autonomy. Autonomy is not synonymous with independence, as what Dr. Ryan had said, or what is written in his book also. Autonomy is that willingness, the willful, the freedom of the person to choose and to take on certain things. So, and here we see Billy to take on the advice of the mentee. That's a form of developing autonomy. Okay, and then they are also given opportunities to choose from the options presented by the mentor. So the mentees are given options, and then autonomy is there because they're able to choose. They're able to choose from those options. That's developing autonomy. And Eve here said, so I think the fact that she is able to narrate to me all her experiences that would magnify what I want to become in the future, if ever hopeful. So with the mentees tell her stories and the different options that she hears from the mentor, because the mentor here talks about the different kind of work that she went through. She had gone through various work, and that's why it gave Eve the options. Okay, these are several options. It made her think, which one would I want? Okay, from those professions that she had. I mean, kind of work, from that work. And also from Eve to be able to freely talk about what they want during mentoring conversations. That's autonomy. What I like about this is like I can really talk about anything under the sun. They are free to say, and they will not feel judged. Okay, so that's autonomy also. And for the relatedness, this is a bit long. That's why I'm not able to put here for this particular slide the figure. If you could look at page 68 of the manuscript I sent, this is actually how it looks like. You won't be able to see it. But again, I'll be focusing on the 3 themes under relatedness, which is the effort exerted by the mentees to grow in relatedness, how mentors help their mentees grow in relatedness, and how the mentoring relationship itself helps the mentees grow in relatedness. So it's all relatedness. So the effort exerted by the mentees to grow in relatedness, so they themselves would want to relate, grow in relationship, or develop more relationships. That takes place also in mentoring. And here Beth says concretely, I know there are other mentors out there who may not have such a personal bond with their mentees, but I guess that was also their choice because I chose to have a good relationship with my mentor. So it's a choice that the mentee takes to have a relationship with their mentor. So that's the effort from the mentees. Now, how did the mentors help their mentees grow in relatedness? So this one is on the side of the mentor from Felipe, it says here. They actually came to him once for problems with my friends and relationships. He really gave also good points and ideas on how I should deal with it, which I really appreciate. So the mentors help them develop certain social skills and gives them techniques, pieces of advice also on how to gain friends and how to develop friendship or how to make the relationship pleasant. Okay. And finally, how the mentoring relationship itself helps the mentees grow in relatedness. The mere fact that there is a mentoring relationship that in itself helps the person grow in relatedness. No? So from there. And then so it felt more comfortable talking to her as it progressed, meaning the mentoring relationship, as the mentoring relationship progressed. So it felt like I can really talk to her. She understands what I'm saying, what I'm feeling, what I'm going through. Okay. Now we go to the third part, the organismic integration theory. Okay, so remember from external motivation to internal motivation. Okay, so here we have the interjected regulation. There were 8 codes and 5 documents. I will not be putting some text here because the focus will be on the next 3 regulations. So for identified regulations, there were 67 codes gathered from all 12 documents from the students. And the 2 major themes here are actions of the mentor to the left, we see on the left, and to the right, we have here areas where mentees are helped. And we see here an arrow in between them because the actions of the mentor would actually lead towards the areas where mentees are helped. Okay, so for example, the advice and tips that the mentor gives will result in better academic performance, emotional adjustment. Okay, what you see on the right. So what are these actions of the mentors? According to Billy, he doesn't even have to talk about time management. For me, I learned it from him the way he is. He's a very busy person. He always sets a schedule. Just by looking at him work, it's inspiring enough for me. So it's not even in the context of the mentoring conversation. It's just the behavior, the action of the mentor that Billy sees. Okay, and that already helped him, develop himself, to inspire him. Okay. Now for Deb, in the areas where mentees are helped, she referring to her mentor. She's helped me open up more, and that's what I've learned, especially in my 4th year as compared to my 3rd year. I really opened up in my 4th year because of her, and she's the kind of person who doesn't really open up, and because of her mentor, she developed that. She's helped to open up some more, and that was very helpful for Deb. Now that's for identified regulation. Now for integrated regulation, we have 30 codes from 9 documents. Okay, sorry, from the identified. So for the identified regulation, this has the most number of codes. So this is the most common motivation of students. And for the integrated regulation, this is the second most common reasons why they see their mentor, because I was able to get 30 codes from 9 of the 12 documents. And the major themes here are common things that the mentor and the mentees have, the things integrated into the lives of mentees, what are the things that are integrated, and then the actions of the mentors, the behavior of the mentors. What are the common things between the mentor and the mentee? According to Fatima, this is what helped her. We have the same identical experiences. We came from the same school. We both have strict parents, and those private stuff I can talk to her about. Okay, so it helps in building the relationship if there are common things that a mentor and mentee share. And then things integrated into the lives of mentees. So what are the things that that the mentees are able to take in and integrate into their lives? Like one of the values he taught me was try to excel now and then have fun and get your reward later. So that's what Eman said. It's something that he learned from his mentor that try to excel, do your best to study now, do well in your exams, and then later on, have fun. And also actions of the mentors. Okay, again from Eman. He was the one who initiated talking about his interests first, what he likes, and the struggle. That gave me I could trust him because he's already putting trust in me. So this is also something that I saw that's very important, and it has to be taken with a grain of salt because again, it's a relationship. The mentor cannot just open up, and if there's no trust involved, it could be surprised. Why is this mentor telling me all of these things? For this case, Emma appreciated the mentor actually, mentioned to him his difficulties and how he's able to overcome them, and appreciated that particular action of his mentor. And lastly, the intrinsic motivation, which is made up of 22 codes in 6 or half of the documents. It talks about mentees, about the mentee, and then the conversation, and about the mentor. Okay, so I put here together, 3 statements from the interviews. I really generally enjoyed the 2 years that when she was with her mentor for 2 years. So this is like enjoyment. Intrinsic motivation is the mere fact the enjoyment is not separable from person. Was also mentioned. So low pressure, high substance. Those are the kind of conversations that I like. Okay, so he enjoys that kind of conversation. For Felipe, it's fun to be with him at times. He can make jokes from time to time, and we'd laugh about stuff also. So, having fun through jokes, having those light moments. And the last part, I mentioned about generating holistic themes, and I have 24. So these are the holistic themes of the 6 female mentees, holistic themes under the 6 male mentees, and then the mentors of female mentors, and then the male mentors. And then I was able to generate these 4 themes: who is the mentor, who is the mentee, what are the experiences of the mentee in the mentoring relationship, what is the nature of the mentoring relationship. Okay, for our first theme, we see here who is the mentor. From the mentee's perspective, we have on the left side, and on the right side also the perspective of the mentor. So we see here that the mentee has more to say about the mentor because from their perspective, of course, they get to see the mentor. Okay. And then for the second theme, who is the mentee? Okay. So we see here that the mentees know that they're very busy, that they have the desire to learn. But from the perspective of the mentor, they see the entire being of the mentee. So it's actually the division of the development of individuals. So we see here that like with administration of the university, just in development, they see compartments in an individual, but they see an individual whole affects the other parts and the entire being. Okay, for the third theme, what are the experiences of the mentee in the mentoring relationship? So we see here the perspectives of the mentees and also the experiences of the mentees from the mentor's perspective. Okay, so we see here various items. And lastly, what is the nature of the mentoring relationship? We see here the lone handshake. And then what is the nature of the mentoring relationship from the mentor's perspective? Of course, there are several of them because mentors, they have experience mentoring several mentees, and they have an idea of what the mentoring relationship could be because it varies from student to student, from mentee to mentee. And what does this handshake mean? What it actually means is in a handshake, someone has to initiate and extend his hand to start the handshake. And then another person should take that hand and both of them should wring the hand together. That's the handshake. Now, the one who should extend his hand is the mentor. So this is from the perspective of the mentor, the mentees. That the mentor has to extend his hand first, and at the same time, the mentee should be willing to take on that hand so that they can actually start the mentoring relationship. So that's a nice analogy from one of the respondents. And now going to the research questions that I presented here earlier, there were three. I have placed on the side the findings that fall under, that answered those research questions. So how is a good mentoring relationship experienced by the mentees? It's answered by the first part, emerging themes, and part four, which is the holistic theme. So this is inductive in nature because from the ground up. Why are mentees motivated to seek out mentoring sessions with their mentors? So we see here the motivations which was explained by organismic integration theory. And as I've mentioned earlier, the most dominant motivation is identification and then followed by integration. And finally, the third research question, how do these mentoring experiences develop the basic psychological needs of competence, autonomy, and relatedness among the mentees, which was answered by the second part when I mentioned about competence, autonomy, and relatedness. Okay, conclusion. So here is a proposed mentor-seeking motivation of mentees model. So we see here on the left side, the mentor, and the right side is the mentee, and in between them is the mentoring relationship, where themes 1, 2, and 5 of the emerging theme, the first study that I did, the first round of analysis I did, they fall. So building that relationship. Once the relationship has been built, then the mentee grows in competence, autonomy, relatedness, theme 3. Okay, and we also see here the basic psychological needs theory, which is a part 3. Okay, and of course, when a mentee realizes that he grows and there's sense to this mentoring relationship, it's not just like feel good thing that I'm able to talk with someone. I actually benefit from it, and once he realizes that with an element of trust, because trust is also very important, then he goes on to seek out his mentor, which is you see here in the right motivations to seek out their mentors. Why mentees initiate mentoring, which is theme 4 of the emerging themes, the first part, and also which is answered by organismic integration theory, part 2, okay, of this study. And of course, that goes back to the mentor. They're motivated to seek out their mentors. So conclusion, so the mentoring relationship addresses needs and meets expectations of mentees. And then both mentors and mentees need to work on that relationship. The growth of the mentees, the basic psychological needs, are facilitated if there's a relationship. The relationship will facilitate development of the mentees, including the development of these basic psychological needs of competency, autonomy, and relatedness. Realizing that mentees are benefiting from this relationship, they are then motivated to seek out their mentors for mentoring conversations, mostly identification and integration regulations under the organismic integration theory. I would say that this is the small, but I would say significant contribution of my study to this field of educational psychology on motivation, that these two regulations, identification, integration, are the motivations of students to seek out their mentors, okay? And of course, the above also enhances the mentoring relationship. And I would also want to take this from Dr. Jean Rhodes, her book Older and Wiser. Decades of mentoring program investment and research have failed to move the needle on youth outcomes, and despite being generally less effective than targeted evidence-based approaches, non-specific friendship models remain dominant. And this is something that somehow is reflected also in the study that I did, that friendship is important, but it should not remain at that level alone. For mentoring to flourish, according to Dr. Jean Rhodes, there has to be specific skills that the mentees should learn to sustain, and so that that mentoring relationship would be impactful, to have a respectable impact on the individual, on the student, on the youth. Okay, so recommendations: development of mentoring programs, which includes mentoring training, recapacitating of mentors with skills that address the needs of the mentees, also building relationship and skills development. Educational psychologists and researchers study how motivation to seek out mentoring can affect academic performance, and also study how prosocial behavior. One thing that I saw also in my study, that some of the mentors were mentees themselves, and they said that it's their way to give back to the university. That's why they become mentors. And being able to help is an aspect of pro-social motivation. Pro-social motivation could also be studied on how it affects the relationship. For, again, education psychologists with guidance counselors to study how a formal or informal mentoring program can be integrated into the school curriculum. Colleges and universities, how can they integrate a mentoring program in their teaching and instruction, again, in their curriculum? Align their mentoring program with their mission vision. It's important. And for researchers, develop an instrument to measure motivations of mentees. And also for NGOs, if it would be possible to develop a mentoring program that helps underprivileged youth. By identifying the needs of this target youth, they can create a mentoring training program that suits them, that would be beneficial for them. That's it, and thank you for listening. Question and answer will follow after this. And I'll be stopping the recording right now.